The results for Q3 at GSK, I think, represent once again the delivery against the strategy we've laid out over the last 3 years. Good underlying performance of the business is really starting to become very clear, albeit it continues to be masked by 3 major issues that we've been dealing with, but which over the next few months and year will start to disappear from our numbers. Those are, of course, the impact of ongoing genericization of Valtrex in America, the impact of the year-on-year comparison of the very large pandemic vaccine sales last year, which won't be repeated on an ongoing basis into next year. And of course, unfortunately, the impact of the withdrawal and restriction of Avandia in various key markets around the world. If you adjust for those 3 things, the underlying sales performance of 6% really reflects the very strong business that we have here at GSK. Strong because we've been investing in our growth businesses, in the emerging markets, our consumer business, our vaccine business, and in dermatology. Those businesses have been really driving our growth forward as we've been adjusting to the various changes in our environment and portfolio in our traditional business areas. As we go forward, those negative headwinds rapidly start to diminish, and that underlying sales growth will become much more apparent in our reported performance. So for me, Q3 here at GSK was another good quarter. It's not all there in the reported numbers yet, but there's no question that the strategy that we are implementing is delivering a more diversified sales growth base for this company, and that's what we intend to continue to deliver.
5 months of 2005, I was at GlaxoSmithKline.
You're married?
Yes, I am.
Look, one of the reasons I ask is there are documents with your name on them, and it looks like your name used to be Jane Corey.
Correct, yes.
Is that right?
Yes, yes.
So you moved into the safety group in 1993.
Yes.
And you were there, were you there the rest of your career with GSK in some form or fashion?
In the safety group?
Yes.
Was I in the safety? Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was.
Safety and pharmacovigilance, are those synonymous or similar?
Yes.
Okay. Did GSK give you any further training or education or send you to school or do anything formally to prepare you to be a safety person in their department?
Yes.
When you left in 2005, you were Director of Evaluation and Training for Global Clinical Safety and Pharmacovigilance at GlaxoSmithKline, is that right?
Yes.
When you were there, how did it work if somebody called in with an adverse event report? How did that work?
My memory of the process is the information would come in. In the U.S., there was a call center, so a report could be called in. People in the call center would take the details of that called-in event, and often at that stage it's minimal information. It could have been a literature report, it could have been a report from a regulatory authority, or it could have been a written-in report from a consumer or a physician. So the ways in which a report came in were numerous, but they would eventually end up in the safety group with one of these safety scientists, and they would have a piece of paper in front of them with the information that they had to enter. They would enter that onto the database, our safety database. For certain events, actually no, I'll take that back. They would enter it to the database. They would then print out the regulatory form from the database, and the case would be reviewed. I recall that if it was serious, it would definitely be reviewed by the safety physician. I don't remember if that was done if it was a non-serious report.
Okay, so, go ahead.
Okay. They would then work with the safety physician to agree any follow-up that was needed, and the follow-up would be requested.
Now, let me stop you here for a second. Follow-up with the patient or the reporter?
With the reporter.
I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, you've got somebody calling in, you've got a data entry scientist assigned to it, and then if it's serious, you have a physician two different people assigned to look at this case report, right?
I think it was very much a team. I think that was really how they worked.
Okay.
It was a team approach to a case.
So a team is assigned then to the case, right? Mm-hmm. It would seem to me that one of the purposes of the team being assigned to the case was to try to figure out whether or not the adverse event was related to the drug.
Right.
Right?
Correct.
And so I'm wondering how that gets accomplished.
That comes back to what I said. I think and I think anything you'd come down to a causality comes back to a physician. That comes back to what I said. The physician would look at the case and they would form a medical opinion as to whether there was a possible, probable, no causality.
Now, the physician that would do what you just described would be a medical doctor that was employed by GlaxoSmithKline. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So you have a degree in pharmacology from the University of London.
Correct.
And you got that in 1985 or 6?
1985. Yeah.
And then it says you went to become a research assistant for Sandoz Institute for Medical Research and Neuropharmacology. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, Sandoz is also a pharmaceutical company.
Yes.
They're a Swiss company, aren't they?
Yes.
You spent 4 years as a research assistant for that pharmaceutical company?
Yes, I did.
And then you went on to become a clinical information scientist at SmithKline Beecham from 1990 to 1993, is that right?
Yes.
And that's in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
What is a clinical information scientist?
In that role, this was an internal medical information group. So they were not the group that. When we hear medical information, you traditionally think of the groups where people can call in and get answers to questions, external people.
Yes.
That was not this group. This was an internal medical information group where we would provide evaluated information on SmithKline Beecham products to SmithKline Beecham personnel. And I worked on cardiovascular and inflammation and tissue repair products in that role.
So, Ms. Nieman, I want to hand you a document that's entitled Paroxetine in Pregnancy. I've marked it Exhibit 1221 and ask you if you have seen that document over the past few days in your meetings with lawyers.
Yes, I have not seen this.
Do you remember this document? Do you remember reviewing this document called Paroxetine in Pregnancy?
I don't remember doing it, but I can see that I did it.
That's your handwriting?
It is my handwriting.
And actually, on the first table, up at the top, it says there have been 8 reports of spontaneous abortion following exposure to paroxetine. These cases are tabulated below, and then we've got them all first trimester. Do you see that?
Yes.
Did it mean anything to you at the time in your role that an association with paroxetine was reported from one of these abortions?
In my role, well, first of all, I don't have a memory of this report. Clearly, I reviewed it, so I can't comment on that specific case. Back in 1996, it was all, as I remember it, and again.